It's in the Joint House inquiry. Tom DeWine is interviewing the Deputy Chief of Alec Station, Tom Wilshire, and Steve Bongardt from the Washington, D.C. FBI field office. Both men are hidden behind a partition. It's a very short video.
Mr. Chairman, let me just first say how much we admire all of you and appreciate what you do for our country every day. We've talked about a wall, and to our FBI agent, I hope you're right. I hope that wall stays down, and I think we in Congress have an obligation to monitor this and just make sure that wall does, in fact, stay down. I believe that part of the problem has been, and we really have two kinds of walls. One is a wall that's there to protect foreign intelligence sources and methods, and we all understand that. That has to be dealt with on a practical basis by those of you who are the professionals in the field. But the other is a Congress-created law with the FISA law. And I will say quite candidly that for many, many years, we did not do our job in monitoring how that law was being interpreted by the court and how that law was then being interpreted down into the field. I think that's our responsibility. Mr. Chairman,
And you know what? This the great example of this is the case of Zacarias Moussaoui, the alleged 20th hijacker, where FBI agent Harry Samit, along with INS agent, I forgot his name, they arrested him and Hussein Al-Attas in a hotel room. I think it was Econo Lodge that they were staying at. They separated the men, started interviewing them, and found that Hussein Al-Attas had a last will and testament hit on his person. Hussein Al-Attas tells the agents that Zacarias Moussaoui hates the West, hates America. It's almost like, they're telling him, hey, we're terrorists, come and detain us, arrest us, right? Either they're just so oblivious and stupid or, something's going on, right? Nevertheless, the FBI is now detaining a foreign national. Zacarias Moussaoui lives in France and has connections to terrorist networks in Great Britain and in France and in Afghanistan. So he basically, the FBI goes to a channel and through their superior, I think it was Dave Franca and the radical fundamentalist unit in Minnesota, they try to get a FISA warrant to look at Zacarias Moussaoui's possessions located in the hotel room. But the wording of the FISA warrant was a little bit argumentative, let me just say. So in other words, the case was open as an intelligence one, not a criminal one. And so there was some wording about whether, Moussaoui has connection to terrorism. So they asked the, I think it was France or Germany, one of them, to give them intel about Moussaoui's background with individuals tied with this mosque in France or Germany. But Dave Frasca and the Radical Fundamentalist Unit rejected the FISA warrant application and said that because you asked for criminal information regarding Moussaoui, and this is an intelligence matter, you have to make this into a criminal. And there was a big argument between Samit, Dave Frasca, and Rob Bowman, who's located with the Radical Fundamentalist Unit. And this is one example that DeWine is basically talking about, because it's the Senate committees that basically do the job of relaying what is in a FISA warrant, what's the correct terminology for criminal, for investigations, stuff like this matter. And DeWine's basically saying that Congress didn't do a good job of that.
I think that we began to change it and improve it with the Patriot Act. We came a long way with that. We now have had a FISA court opinion, which I don't particularly agree with, but at least it is a public opinion. And at least we can see where the court is going. Apparently, of course, there's been an appeal. I assume that the appellate decision will be published. It will give us some guidance then to see where that court is going so that we can make whatever changes that we think need to be made. So I think we have to follow what the court is doing, see how it's being interpreted, and also see how it's being implemented down into the field, and that's our obligation to do it. And I think, Mr. Chairman, we can do that consistent with national security concerns. It's our committee's job. We ought to do it.
And so, look, it's always when a big event happens, a big accident, like, for example, you have a intersection in your neighborhood that, is susceptible to car accidents. There's no traffic light whatsoever. There's no signs, right? And everyone's telling the town hall, listen, we need to implement a light before someone dies. And then all of a sudden, they say, yeah, we'll think about it. We'll think about, in other words, they don't want to spend money or they don't want to do the time. Someone dies. Light goes up. Well, it's fucking too late now, you stupid bastard, right? I mean, it's a little bit too late for this guy. And it took 9/11 to basically, for Congress to look at the vulnerabilities of a FISA warrant.
Let me just ask a question.
Well, the definitions involved with it. It's always that way.
To our CIA officer. You've had as all our witnesses have had a great experience and great background. And it's clear that you were, a real expert in intelligence. You've had experience in the Counterterrorism Center. You now have testified that you're a detailee to the FBI. So you've seen it, in a sense, from both sides. Again, I know you don't want to get into this in great detail in a public session, but do you have any guidance for us in regard to the Counterterrorism Center? How are we doing? What else do you need there? How is the interface between the FBI and the CIA coming? Does that need any more improvement? Just kind of get.
That's funny because at this point, joint inquiries, they don't know. 9/11 Commission, nobody in Congress knows that the CIA was running an illegal operation with Saudi intelligence inside the United States regarding Khalid Abdul Hazmi, who later on hijacked Flight 77 and crashed in the Pentagon. Had Congress known this, Wilshire is not on the stand. Tenet is fired. Cofer Black is fired. Wilshire is fired. Mortivities, everyone's fired. Like, make it rain, fire, here's a slip. So what should have happened to the CIA? What the fuck should happen? Should have scattered into 1,000 winds. Because of their large-scale illegal fuck-up, 9/11 happens. And they're not the only ones. Not to just put the blame on the CIA.
Give us a quick.
And he's asking, what should we do? What should we change?
A quick snapshot of that, if you could.
Imagine de Gaulle.
It's going to be quick because I've been away from the Counterterrorism Center for quite some time now, but and they've evolved in a revolutionary way since I've left, and certainly since September 11th. It's very difficult to talk about today's CTC in terms that were relevant to before September 11th because it is so changed, and I don't know the details of all the changes. I think in terms of how, any recommendations that might be made, it might be better to come from somebody who's attached to it right now rather than myself.
Right,
as far as the relationship between CIA and FBI, there is a move afoot to exchange personnel between the two. That's critical that continue to expand.
That's funny. You're talking about the relationship between CIA and FBI. He was the guy who basically interfered with the FBI's investigation of al-Midor and al-Hazmi by not giving them information that could have basically detained both men while they were inside the United States. CIA knew they were al-Qaeda. Imagine the gold this motherfucker makes. This is unbelievable. Meanwhile, sitting next to him is an FBI agent, Steve Bongardt, a real hero. Guy warned that we got to do something about this or someone's going to die. He said this in an email to Dina Parsi, a legal attaché for the FBI, where she worked in Washington, D.C. as some legal office or something like that. Just imagine the goal that Wilshire, but he's a sociopath anyway. Here's a guy who basically knew two al-Qaeda operatives, they knew they were al-Qaeda, withheld information from the FBI intentionally on his dime, his watch. He did it.
Anybody else?
Should be strung for the light posts.
Counterterrorism. Any other thoughts? Want to jump in?
I would say, just from
That's
my
Steve
perspective,
Bongardt talking.
the management and stories that I hear is that we have come a long way. I think we need to go that much further. Not only exchanging
It's not him.
management,
He's not
but
talking.
also exchanging the field agents at some level, and guard against the fact that once an individual goes to the FBI or vice versa, that individual becomes beholden just to that institution. That they're going to, that they continue to be able to flow the information back and forth inside a system of checks and balances that allows that information to be shared between both organizations. The first step might have been management. Maybe the next step is actual agents from and officers from both sides being exchanged.
Rollins?
In order to do that, Senator,
Yeah, okay, now listen, this is the reason why after 9/11 the walls came down between the CIA, the NSA, and the FBI, right? Because the walls are meant there to protect the identity of, say, an eyewitness. There's certain rules and guidelines. You have to share information. After 9/11, the gloves came off, the CIA once said. Information now is shared within each agency about anybody in the whole fucking world, especially in the United States. There is no secrecy. There's no parameters. Nothing. They were set in place so that one agency couldn't take advantage of one agency's information and use it maliciously or nefariously or erroneously or with malfeasance behind it. So, there's a careful guidelines. Yeah, it runs slow, but, that's why we have privacy and safety. We no longer have that anymore. Thanks to cocksuckers like this guy, Tom Wilshire, not Steve Bongardt.
totally agree with my colleague. It becomes a resource issue. I know in talking to past chiefs of staff.
Here's Michael Ronings. That's who's talking, FBI.
We have to be where they are in terms of going after the enemy. I know we'd like to all have officers and agents in everyone else's field offices and stations. That's not practical, but to begin to go down that road, I don't want to speak for my colleagues, but I certainly think I can. We need more people.
No, the problem is the enemy was sitting right next to you too. I mean, yes, radical fundamentalists do exist. Arab fundamentalists do exist. They're the enemy. Yes, they are. But the enemy was sitting right next to you. Tom Wilshire. He's the enemy. CIA is the enemy. Why? They were the enemy of the FBI. They didn't share information, which could have prevented 9/11. End of story. Right? End of story. Now, that's assuming that the CIA knew that these two men would hijack planes and whatnot. I'm not willing to go there. I don't have that specific information. Nevertheless, we can still charge them with a crime. The crime is withholding information about criminal activities inside criminal actors from a criminal organization that the CIA was at war with. Because George Tenet, the DCI of the CIA, basically said in 1999, we're at war with Al Qaeda. He said that publicly. Meanwhile, he is the man behind the withholding of information, because it goes straight to the top, regarding Al Qaeda operatives inside the United States, from getting to, say, the National Security Council, the principals, the FBI, Department of Justice, or the Department of State, or the Pentagon, for that fucking matter. And the Pentagon ran their own operation called Able Danger about terrorist operatives inside the United States. That too was interfered with. Why? More questions and answers. All right, guys. Listen, thank you very much for tuning into the video. We're going to do a video almost every day now. Rocking and rolling. We're getting right back into it. Information is power. Power belongs in the hands of the people. Guys, have a good night. Stay safe. See you in the next video.